Okay, we have another monitor in the studio. Man, the amount of monitors I get through the studio is crazy. But this one is quite a unique one because OLED monitors aren't new. There's loads of OLED monitors out there. However, this one is specifically designed if you're a Mac user and you're looking for that color accuracy that matches the colors on your MacBook display. Let's first unbox this monitor, see what's inside, and then we'll go through an actual sort of like in-depth guide on it basically. Okay, so inside the box we do get a USB-C to USB-C cable, which we'll be able to use with our MacBook and have power and display over one cable. We also do have a display port. We obviously have the power adapter, and we have something very important, the calibration report. So because this is a Pro Art monitor, it is calibrated to be as accurate as it can possibly be. We also have the stand. So thankfully, it is a very nice metal stand. Oh, actually, they've changed the color as well. Usually they're more of a sort of darkish gray. This is more of a lighter gray. Yeah, this is a really nice stand, very thin as well. Very thin profile. I don't even know if I'll be able to get it to focus, but a very thin profile stand. Mounting plate for the back of the monitor. And of course, we also have the monitor arm stand thing here too. So these two parts just go together like so. And then we're going to mount the arm as well, because this will make it much easier to then actually get the monitor out of the box. I also forgot to show these. There are some cable ties which are made from leather, which look awesome. Like this is a nice little touch. And then let's mount our monitor. There we go, boom. Okay, we have the monitor. This is like one of our most favorite parts, actually taking off the peel. Oh wow. It's actually a glossy panel. It is a glossy panel. It's a 4K OLED glossy panel, which is 27 inches. This looks stunning. This looks really nice. Obviously, it has the typical ASUS bezel on the bottom, but they changed the branding. It now says Pro Art instead of ASUS, which I think is nice. And I do like the stand and the way it looks. It's just very clean and minimal looking. Honestly, I'm just more impressed that it's an actual glossy panel, or glossy display, which should look amazing. It should make the colors pop, a lot more contrast and stuff. I personally prefer glossy panels, but it does depend on the situation, because matte panels can also be ideal depending on the room, the setup, whatever you need basically. So I've been using this monitor for a few days now. This is of course a Pro Art monitor, so it's specially designed for creative professionals. So whether you're a video editor, designer, animator, photographer, so if you fall into any of those sorts of professions, just anything where you need good color accuracy, this is exactly what the Pro Art lineup is for. This monitor has a 4K QD OLED panel, which can do up to 120 Hz, which actually matches the MacBook perfectly, right? Because the MacBook is also a 120 Hz display. It has a peak brightness of 1000 nits, covers 99% of the DCI-P3, and there's a proximity sensor as well as an ambient light sensor, which isn't something you usually find in other monitors. The proximity sensor is when, of course, you step away from the monitor, it changes the brightness, it dims it so that you don't get burn-in, it combats burn-in. And of course the ambient light sensor means that it can adjust the brightness of the monitor automatically depending on your environment. Again, that ambient light sensor is only usually something you see in Apple displays. ASUS have two different sizes of this monitor. They have the 26.5 inch size, which is the one I have here, but they also have a 32 inch size. So it's great to see that you can get it in whatever size you like. It is a glossy panel too, so for everyone who prefers glossy panels, you're going to have a fantastic experience with this. The contrast, the depth, it just looks amazing when it's glossy. And whatever coating they have on this, it does a fantastic job of hiding reflections and stuff. So if you're worried about that sort of thing, of course it depends on your environment. You know, some environments cater to a matte display. But if you're looking for a glossy display, honestly, this is brilliant. One thing this does have that ASUS have specifically tried to highlight is that it has an anti-scratch film. So you don't have to worry about potentially scratching the screen when you're cleaning it or anything like that. I always like to use a microfiber cloth anyway when I'm cleaning my displays. One thing that's really surprised me about this is actually the HDR performance. Because it can do up to 1000 nits, when I've been watching HDR content, it has that function like other Apple displays where it can make only the HDR content itself really bright, and it works amazingly well. It looks fantastic. It's hard for me to illustrate it on camera, but it's one of those things where you have to experience it in person. But the HDR performance on this is just incredible. It's one of the best HDR performances that I've seen. When it comes to ports, there is one HDMI 2.1 port, a DisplayPort 1.4 in port, and an out port, so you can daisy chain multiple monitors, 2 USB-C ports, with one of them having 96 watts of power delivery, which actually makes it perfect for something like this where you just want a one cable setup, because you can have data and power going through one cable on your MacBook. And there's a built-in KVM, so if you have another PC or a Mac connected to it, you can use the same keyboard and mouse for both. ASUS have actually specifically designed this monitor for people who are Mac users, people who are used to Mac displays. There is an M model P3 color setting which aligns the color and temperature of the display to match the MacBook displays. This has always been a big issue for me, because I found that most displays, most external displays, the colors on them don't actually match the colors of my MacBook display. And it's just something where, especially like me, when you're doing design work, when you're doing photography, when you're doing video editing, and you want to be able to accurately see the colors and make sure it looks good, not having the display matching can actually be very, very frustrating. I found it especially frustrating in apps like Figma, where when I'm designing icons, when I'm designing user interfaces, and I'm using like a million different shades of gray, I want to make sure that I can actually see them. I can actually see the differences. And MacBook displays usually are just better at that sort of thing. Thankfully, ASUS have the color settings to match the MacBook display. There's also the Display Widget Center app, which lets you change settings of the display without having to use the buttons on the screen. But the key feature that I like is that I can adjust the brightness of the display using the keyboard on my Mac, so I don't have to go into the settings and stuff to adjust the brightness. But of course, because there's an ambient light sensor in it, I don't even have to do that anyway. I also just want to make it clear, this is not designed to compete against the Studio Display or the Studio Display XDR. This sort of sits differently away from them, primarily because, of course, it's not a 5K display, it's a 4K display. And it's an OLED display. Studio Display XDR, they're not OLED panels, they're simply IPS panels, and the Studio Display XDR obviously has the multiple dimming zones and stuff. I don't think you can really compare the two, especially when you look at the price of this thing. This goes for $699, this version, and then the 32-inch version goes for $899. Apple's own offerings of the Studio Display and the Studio Display XDR go for double, triple that price. So again, I feel like you can't really compare them. Another big difference, of course, with this is that you can connect up a games console, you can connect up a PC and get that 120 Hz with that OLED gloriousness. So I feel like this is a monitor that's perfect for an all-in-one sort of setup. If you want one monitor that can do everything, connect to your Mac, connect to your games console, connect to your PC, have everything all connected and have a fantastic experience between all of them, this monitor can do all of that. I personally think that the smaller version, 26.5-inch version at 4K, makes more sense than the 32-inch version. Personally, for me, I just prefer displays that have more pixel density. I think once you're using 4K at 32 inches, you can see the pixels a bit more. It's not as sharp, but that's just a personal preference. For some people, 32 inches at 4K is completely fine. And if that's what you prefer, then go for the 32-inch. The perfect person who this monitor is designed for is a creative professional looking for a highly accurate OLED monitor for their Mac that's also relatively affordable. And like I said, the great thing is if you are into gaming and have a gaming PC, you can have an incredible gaming experience as well. ASUS are really well known for their ProArt lineup. I've seen a lot of professionals use specifically the ProArt lineup because they come out of the box factory calibrated, which again, for lots of people is a very, very important feature, especially if you're doing professional work. I'll leave links to everything down in the description below, of course. Make sure to check out some of my other monitor reviews that I've done. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.